What if everything you were taught about being good was not the whole truth? What if the very values you were told to cherish, kindness, compassion, generosity, were not only fragile but dangerous when applied without caution? From childhood, most of us are taught that goodness is the ultimate virtue, the shining path to respect, love, and acceptance. Yet history, philosophy, and psychology all suggest a darker reality. Being too good can make you vulnerable, blind, and even powerless. Niccolò Machiavelli, one of the most controversial thinkers of the Renaissance, confronted this reality head-on. He is often remembered as cold, ruthless, and calculating, the man who taught rulers to be cunning like a fox and fierce like a lion. But beneath this reputation lies a more complex lesson. Machiavelli did not reject goodness. He revealed its hidden dangers, the ways in which goodness could be twisted, abused, or turned against the one who practices it. In his masterpiece, The Prince, Machiavelli explained that appearances matter more than essence. It is not the ruler who is truly good who thrives, but the ruler who seems good while remaining strong enough to act ruthlessly when necessary. This distinction between appearing good and being good exposes the dark psychology of morality. The world rewards perception, not purity. In this video, we explore the dark psychology of goodness, lessons from Machiavelli. We'll look at how helping others can sometimes harm them, how kindness can weaken both giver and receiver, and why Machiavelli insisted that unchecked goodness can be fatal to power. This isn't an invitation to cruelty. It's a wake-up call. If you want to survive, to protect your energy, and to lead with strength, you must learn when to help, when to withhold, and when to cloak your goodness in strategy. Part 1. The Mask of Goodness. Machiavelli's first lesson is unsettling. Society values the illusion of goodness more than the reality of it. He famously wrote that a prince does not need to be virtuous only to appear virtuous. Why? Because people, he argued, judge with their eyes, not with their hands. They cannot touch the truth. They can only see what is presented to them. This principle applies far beyond kings and princes. Look around today. Celebrities project an image of kindness through charitable donations splashed across social media. Politicians smile, promise justice, and embrace noble causes even while corruption brews beneath the surface. In workplaces, some colleagues act friendly only to advance their ambitions. The mask of goodness has always been more powerful than authentic goodness itself. But here is the trap. If you practice genuine goodness without limits, you expose yourself to exploitation. A person who never says no, who constantly sacrifices, who bends over backward to accommodate others. This person may be admired on the surface but is secretly seen as weak. People pleasers often discover, too late, that the more they give, the less respect they receive. Modern psychology supports Machiavelli's insight. Studies on social behavior reveal that people who set boundaries are more respected than those who always agree. Psychologists describe a phenomenon called compassion fatigue, when those who give too much burnout collapse and lose their sense of self. In contrast, those who protect their energy by selectively showing goodness maintain healthier relationships and greater influence. Machiavelli's warning, therefore, is timeless. Authentic goodness without control is a liability. To survive in a competitive world, you must balance kindness with strength, compassion with caution. Appear good when necessary, but protect your core from those who would exploit your sincerity. Part 2. Helping can harm. Now we arrive at one of Machiavelli's most unsettling lessons. Helping is not always helpful. In fact, help can harm both the giver and the receiver. When you give too freely, you risk creating dependency. Instead of empowering the person, your help weakens them. A friend who always receives your support may stop learning how to solve problems alone. A child shielded from consequences grows up fragile, unprepared for the real world. What begins as kindness becomes a silent theft of resilience. Machiavelli warned rulers that excessive generosity or mercy often leads to chaos. Citizens who are spoiled by constant benefits eventually expect them as rights. Gratitude transforms into entitlement, and when the flow of generosity stops, resentment explodes. The very people you helped may turn against you. Think of a workplace example. A manager who constantly covers for underperforming employees may feel generous, but in reality, they lower standards and breed resentment among hardworking staff. Or imagine a parent who rescues their child from every mistake, paying off debts, solving every problem, excusing every error. This parent is not raising a strong individual, but creating someone unprepared for struggle, someone who collapses at the first challenge. Modern psychology calls this enabling. When you rescue someone from the natural consequences of their behavior, you don't save them, you trap them. Addiction counselors often warn families that endless rescuing fuels the addiction rather than curing it. Machiavelli, writing centuries earlier, recognized the same pattern. Too much mercy produces weakness, and weakness invites disaster. This doesn't mean you should never help. Machiavelli himself wasn't against generosity. Instead, he urged strategic generosity. Help when it strengthens others. Withhold when it breeds dependency. The wise leader, the wise parent, the wise friend asks, does this act of kindness empower or does it enslave? The dark psychology of goodness is simple but hard to swallow. Helping can wound. Kindness can cripple and generosity can destroy when it is blind and unchecked. Part 3. The burden of gratitude. Machiavelli understood a bitter truth about human psychology. People are rarely grateful for the help they receive. At first, assistance is welcomed with smiles, praise, and appreciation. But over time, the emotional weight of being indebted turns gratitude into resentment. He wrote that men are quicker to forget the good you do them than the harm you cause. Why? Because receiving help places a person in a position of weakness. To accept help is to acknowledge dependence, and dependence often breeds hidden shame. That shame does not always transform into loyalty. It can twist into quiet hostility. Think of history. Rulers who showered their people with endless favors often faced betrayal. Julius Caesar pardoned many enemies who plotted against him, only for some to join the conspiracy that led to his assassination. Machiavelli saw this pattern as universal. To be too merciful or too generous is to plant seeds of rebellion in the very hearts you tried to win. We see the same pattern in modern life. A friend who constantly borrows money may at first show gratitude, but when the favors continue, their dependence turns uncomfortable. They may even begin to dislike you, not because you harmed them, but because your generosity highlighted their inability to stand on their own. In workplaces, employees promoted out of pity rather than merit often become bitter rather than loyal. The psychology here is simple. People want to feel capable, not indebted. When your help threatens their pride, their gratitude fades. And as Machiavelli warned, they may one day repay kindness with betrayal. The lesson is chilling. Help sparingly, help wisely, and never expect gratitude as a reward. Goodness is not a guarantee of loyalty. It may even be the spark of rebellion. Part 4. Mercy versus fear. Few ideas from Machiavelli are as controversial as his argument about fear and love. He wrote, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." To many this sounds cruel, but his reasoning exposes another dark side of goodness. Love is fragile. It depends on emotion, which is unstable, shifting with circumstances, mood, and gossip. Fear, on the other hand, is consistent. It arises from respect for boundaries and the knowledge of consequences. If people love you but do not fear the consequences of harming you, their love may vanish the moment loyalty becomes inconvenient. Machiavelli argued that rulers who rely only on mercy invite chaos. If a leader is endlessly forgiving, subjects test limits. Mercy without discipline encourages abuse. Think of a teacher who never enforces rules. At first, students may adore their kindness, but soon the classroom descends into disorder. The very quality that once attracted admiration becomes the cause of collapse. Modern psychology echoes this idea in discussions of boundaries. Healthy relationships, whether romantic, professional, or social, require clear lines. Love without limits is not strength. It is weakness disguised as kindness. When people know there are no consequences, they lose respect. This doesn't mean cruelty is the answer. Machiavelli never argued that rulers should be hated. In fact, he cautioned against it, warning that hatred is more dangerous than love. The true path lies in balance. Appear kind but establish fear of consequences. Be merciful when it strengthens order, ruthless when mercy would lead to chaos. So the lesson is this: goodness without discipline collapses, but disciplined strength cloaked in kindness creates stability. To be loved without being feared is fragile. To be feared without being hated is power. Part 5. The corruption of excessive virtue. One of Machiavelli's sharpest insights is that excessive virtue can be just as destructive as vice. While morality is often framed as a simple battle between good and evil, Machiavelli revealed a deeper paradox. When goodness becomes extreme, it turns into its opposite. Take mercy, for example. A ruler who is merciful to criminals may believe they are showing humanity. But if mercy becomes excessive, if every crime is forgiven, the result is lawlessness, which harms the innocent. In this case, mercy ceases to be a virtue. It becomes a tool of destruction. History is full of such examples. The fall of Florence, Machiavelli's own city, was accelerated by leaders who clung to ideals of purity and morality while enemies grew stronger. Their unwillingness to act ruthlessly when necessary left the city vulnerable. In Machiavelli's eyes, rigid virtue blinded them to reality. We see the same pattern today. Consider a leader who refuses to lay off workers even when a company is failing. Their compassion seems noble, but the eventual collapse destroys jobs for everyone. Or think of parents who never discipline their children out of love. The intention is kindness, but the outcome is irresponsibility, entitlement, and weakness. Psychologists describe this as pathological altruism, when helping others to an extreme ends up causing harm. Doctors who sacrifice their health by overworking for patients, activists who burn out while fighting for every cause, or caregivers who neglect themselves for family members, all are victims of virtue taken too far. Machiavelli's point is not that virtue is worthless, but that virtue must be guided by wisdom. Courage, mercy, and generosity are powerful qualities, but when practiced without limits, they collapse into chaos. Excessive courage becomes recklessness. Excessive mercy becomes injustice. Excessive generosity becomes poverty. So his fifth lesson is stark. Goodness without balance is not good at all. It is another form of corruption. Part 5. The corruption of excessive virtue. One of Machiavelli's sharpest insights is that excessive virtue can be just as destructive as vice. While morality is often framed as a simple battle between good and evil, Machiavelli revealed a deeper paradox. When goodness becomes extreme, it turns into its opposite. Take mercy, for example. A ruler who is merciful to criminals may believe they are showing humanity. But if mercy becomes excessive, if every crime is forgiven, the result is lawlessness, which harms the innocent. In this case, mercy ceases to be a virtue. It becomes a tool of destruction. History is full of such examples. The fall of Florence, Machiavelli's own city, was accelerated by leaders who clung to ideals of purity and morality while enemies grew stronger. Their unwillingness to act ruthlessly when necessary left the city vulnerable. In Machiavelli's eyes, rigid virtue blinded them to reality. We see the same pattern today. Consider a leader who refuses to lay off workers even when a company is failing. Their compassion seems noble, but the eventual collapse destroys jobs for everyone. Or think of parents who never discipline their children out of love. The intention is kindness, but the outcome is irresponsibility, entitlement, and weakness. Psychologists describe this as pathological altruism, when helping others to an extreme ends up causing harm. Doctors who sacrifice their health by overworking for patients, activists who burn out while fighting for every cause, or caregivers who neglect themselves for family members, all are victims of virtue taken too far. Machiavelli's point is not that virtue is worthless, but that virtue must be guided by wisdom. Courage, mercy, and generosity are powerful qualities, but when practiced without limits, they collapse into chaos. Excessive courage becomes recklessness. Excessive mercy becomes injustice. Excessive generosity becomes poverty. So his fifth lesson is stark. Goodness without balance is not good at all. It is another form of corruption. Part 6. Goodness as a tool of power. To Machiavelli, goodness was never an absolute virtue. It was a tool, a mask, a performance, a weapon in the arsenal of power. He advised rulers not to discard morality, but to use morality strategically. Appear merciful when mercy secures loyalty. Appear generous when generosity inspires devotion. But never let these acts of goodness come at the expense of survival. This is where many misunderstand Machiavelli. They think he dismissed ethics entirely. In truth, he saw ethics as theater. People are drawn to symbols, stories, and appearances. A ruler who looks noble and just commands admiration, even if his private decisions are cold and calculating. The performance of goodness protects authority, while the reality of controlled ruthlessness sustains it. Consider today's leaders. A politician donates to charity, hugs children and speaks of fairness, but behind closed doors makes harsh deals to maintain power. A CEO preaches kindness and sustainability while laying off thousands to save the company. Hypocrisy? Perhaps. But in Machiavelli's framework, this is survival. People want to believe in goodness even if it is a carefully crafted illusion. Psychologists describe this as impression management. Humans by nature curate their image to gain approval. Social media thrives on this principle. Curated kindness, curated compassion, curated virtue. Rarely is it the full truth, but it works because perception shapes reality. Machiavelli's sixth lesson, then, is unsettling. Goodness is most powerful when used as a tool, not as a rule. To survive, sometimes you must act against morality, while still wearing its mask. Appear good, but never be bound by goodness when survival demands otherwise. Part 7. The balance of shadow and light. At this point, it may seem as though Machiavelli is advocating for a life of deceit and cruelty. But that is a shallow reading. His real message is about balance. He did not tell rulers to abandon goodness, but to master it, to know when to show compassion, when to withhold it, and when to act with ruthless clarity. The danger lies not in goodness itself, but in blind goodness. Blind goodness ignores the realities of human nature. That people are self-interested, that gratitude fades, that love without respect is fragile, that virtue without strength collapses. Blind goodness believes the world is fair, when in fact the world is full of competing wills, each seeking advantage. The wise leader, the wise individual, learns to live in both shadow and light. Show compassion when it strengthens. Be ruthless when survival requires it. This duality is not hypocrisy, it is wisdom. Even nature operates this way. The sun nurtures life, but without the destructive power of storms, ecosystems cannot renew themselves. Strength lies in balance, not in purity. For us today, the lesson is practical. In your relationships, your career, your family, you cannot survive on goodness alone. Set boundaries. Protect your energy. Show kindness when it uplifts, but withdraw it when it enables weakness. Let people respect you for your strength as much as for your compassion. In this balance, you are neither a victim nor a tyrant. You are whole, ending the dark psychology of goodness. So what does all this mean for us? Machiavelli's insights, though written 5 centuries ago, remain as sharp as ever. They force us to ask uncomfortable questions. When I help, am I truly empowering or am I weakening? When I show kindness, is it respected or is it exploited? Do I wear the mask of goodness wisely, or do I allow it to blind me to reality? The dark psychology of goodness is this: virtue without strategy becomes vice. Kindness without boundaries becomes weakness. Generosity without limits becomes poverty. Mercy without discipline becomes injustice. And love without respect becomes betrayal. Machiavelli's challenge to us is not to abandon goodness, but to master it, to use it with intelligence, to protect it with strength, and to balance it with the harsh realities of life. For in the end, those who wield goodness blindly are consumed by it, while those who balance compassion with clarity endure. So the next time you are tempted to give endlessly, forgive without caution, or help without thought. Remember Machiavelli's warning: goodness can be dangerous. Use it wisely or risk becoming its victim.